This land I love. This land of the free. This land of purple mountain, rivers wide, wild, the soil of a billion seeds, land of Chesapeake and Cherokee, land of sojourners, seekers, land of progress and preacher, with the beat of every burro and the hero of the classroom teacher. This land of Bell, Thomas Edison, land of Jackie Robinson, land of bandstand and farmland, bluegrass and Graceland. This land is a Sunday meal, still warm on the kitchen oven. The warm brilliance of Abraham Lincoln and the bravery of Harriet Tubman. This land is a good movie in the making, an idea in the waking, light of liberty still blazing, a bold prayer in the praying. Yes, this land is a land where we never forget, where we may fall, but we shall rise. Land of one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. Land of these many states united, indivisible under God. Land of dreams on every street and hope on every block. Land of working, land of wading through the water, through our fears. Land of our father's blood, land of our mother's tears. Land of 250 years of America. America, the young and old. America, the people. America, the beautiful. This land I love.
All right, we have been celebrating the weekend our 250th birthday as a country, and maybe you did that by blowing stuff up. I don't know. Maybe you did it by having a hot dog. That seems to be the American thing to do. Maybe you did it by getting together with family and grilling out and things like that. And it's our nation's birthday, and today we're going to talk a little bit about that. We saw in that little video there's our history as a country. Really, 250 years is not that long in the scope of all of history. But we've had a great ups and downs, highs and lows, some struggles, some joys that have made up our history of our country. And so as you think about America on its 250th birthday, what thoughts come to your mind? What's your thoughts and feelings about our country? Maybe they're good, maybe they're not. One of the things I think about has been, and one of the exciting things that I've been enjoying is we've been hosting the World Cup here in America, and that was interesting to have a bunch of people from different countries here on the 4th of July weekend. But it's been fun to watch all these different people from all over the world be at our country, for maybe a lot of them for the first time. And my favorite people have been the Japanese down in Texas, and they've been eating like barbecue for the first time, like Texas barbecue, and they're like really excited about it. And so like I don't know if you've seen that on social media or on the news or anything, but there's been so many people just living it up in America for the first time, and we get to enjoy that. And they're blown away about all kinds of stuff. And I saw a little thing online. It talked about Americans go to Europe, and they're like, wow, look at all these beautiful buildings and this history. And then the Europeans come to America, and they're like, look at this 250-ounce jar of peanut butter I got at Costco. And they're like blown away by like, you can get ice in your drink and air conditioning in your house. And so I saw some people that were doing like an interview on the street, and they were like, what's some of the best food that you've had so far? And there was like these ladies from Sweden, they go, Long John Silver's. And I'm just like, what? They're like, it was the best catfish I've ever had, and we can't get that in Sweden. You're like, Long John Silver's? Really? That's the best? And a lot of them are like eating fast food and things like that because they don't have it, or they have all these different brands that they can never experience. And I just think, man, you are in some of the biggest cities of America, and you could be enjoying much better food than that. You need to be like those Japanese guys eating Texas barbecue down there. And another thing I thought was funny, like people are just amazed at like all kinds of stuff, like interesting stuff. Like someone from South Africa, they were walking through like a park, and they were talking about how enjoyable it was, because if they had a park like that in their city back home, it would be just mobbed with people, and you'd have to be worried about safety. And he's like, I'm walking through here, and I can enjoy it, and there's just so much space, and I don't have to, like, I see moms and kids by themselves, and there's no fear and stuff like that. So it's interesting stuff like that. And it's interesting to see, like, people were just, like, amazed at, like, small stuff, like the sunset. They'd be like, do you have sunsets like this here all the time? And I saw this guy from America. He's like, do you guys not have anything in Europe? You don't even have sunsets? It's like, there's like, it was just kind of funny, I thought. But one of the really the most interesting thing I thought was there was a lot of Europeans that were saying that their experience here was much different than what they expected. And there was a lot of people that said that the media has lied to them in Europe about the conditions here in America. And it's been fun to see how much joy and how much kindness and how much excitement has been. You'd see like the people from Scotland walking through the streets of Boston, just playing their bagpipes and things like that. But it's also interesting to see just regular people in like Kansas City and like mid-America that you wouldn't imagine, and how they've shown kindness to these people, and they were just blown away by that. And I saw someone saying that they were nervous to come to our country for the World Cup because they were worried about a hostile environment. They were worried about if they were going to be safe because of guns and things like that. And they're like, it's totally different than what they see on the news. Like, we've been lied to, they said. I even saw this guy from Germany. He was sharing I saw it on the news. He was talking about how he almost didn't come because he was so nervous about if it was going to be a hostile environment. And he said he came, and he was talking about how, like, they were in Boston, and like we think like Boston, that's not even like the most friendly place in America, right? That's like they don't seem to be like our most kind people, but even in Boston, how he had such a great experience. And he was at like a Red Sox game, sitting next to this guy from America, and they were just talking. And then he was like, I'm not sure how I'm supposed to get back to my hotel. He was asking him how to get back. And the guy's like, I'll just give you a ride. And he ends up giving him a ride home. People have been talking about like how they've like paid for people's meals or drinks or things like that. And this guy from Germany who was worried about showing up to our country ended up being emotional in this interview because of the kindness that he experienced. But all along they said, I think we've been lied to by the media. And I wonder if it's not any different here in America. I wonder if we've been lied to as well. I wonder if we've bought into this narrative that isn't necessarily true. That our country is so divided, that our country is this hostile environment, that our country is facing this deep division. Like, we see it on the news, but we don't experience it every day. And I wonder if we've bought into that mindset as well. And I wonder if today we can maybe not buy into that narrative anymore, but begin to make some changes even in our own hearts that can actually heal our land. We're going to look at this verse in 2 Chronicles today that talks about this, and it's a famous verse. Maybe if you think about our country and things like that, this is a verse that maybe people share. It's in 2 Chronicles chapter 7. Let's take a look at that together. It says this. It says, if my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then I will hear from heaven, and I will forgive their sins, and I will heal their land. This is a popular verse that people share about our country and the idea of healing our land and things like that. But let's talk a little bit about the context of this verse before we kind of dive into it. This is actually from a dream that King Solomon was having, and God was speaking to them in a dream. See, like, if we have a relationship with God, now we have His Spirit within us, and that's one way He can speak to us or guide us. But it was different back before the Spirit came, which came after Jesus ascended. And so God would speak to the prophets, to the kings, as we see here, through dreams and through visions and things like that. And so here we see God speaking to King Solomon as he is preparing to dedicate the temple. See, what happens is that the temple is really the presence of God resides there. It's a place where they meet with God, his presence in the Holy of Holies. And so as they're building this temple, are going to dedicate this temple, God is speaking to King Solomon and sharing about, as we continue to read through 2 Chronicles, he's sharing about the time of David and how the favor of God could return to the nation like it was during this time of David. And so as we look at this verse today, what we have to remember is that this is a verse that is for the Hebrew people during the days of King Solomon. And so the promise that we see there is really for those Hebrew people back then. But I still think that there's good insight for us today. One of the things we have to remember is that as Americans, sometimes we are a little self-focused. America is not God's chosen nation. The Hebrew people during the days of Israel were his chosen people. And then the 12 tribes of Israel, we see that kind of shifting to the 12 apostles of Jesus to begin the church. The church is God's people now. And so we have to remember that America is not God's chosen people. We are a nation founded on Christian values, but we are not his chosen people. So that's one thing to remember. As we look at this promise, this is a promise to the Hebrew people, which has elements that we can still hang on to today. And so what does that mean? Like, what are some things that we should pull out of this today for our country, maybe to change the narrative in our own hearts, in our own minds? Well, it begins with this. It says, let's look at that verse again. It says, if my people, which again was the Hebrew people back then, but as of the church now, we're God's people. He says, if the people who are called by my name, see again, called by his name, we are Christians. That means little Christ, or we're bearing his name. He says, if they will, the first thing it says there is, will humble themselves. If we want to change the narrative in our mind and in our hearts, to not be about the division, to not be about letting the media control our feelings and our attitudes and our actions, it begins with this idea of humility. Now, what does it mean to be humble? Throughout the Bible, we see time and time again where it says this verse, God opposes the proud, but gives grace to the humble. Like, the idea of being humble is near to the heart of God. Humility is about not making it all about me, but it is saying that other people's thoughts, feelings, the people themselves matter. It's about living your life humbly means not just living only for yourself. The best picture of that we see is actually the picture of Jesus. We were singing about that, talking about that earlier. We see an example of this in Philippians chapter 2. Here's what it says, Philippians chapter 2. It says, then make my joy complete by being like-minded, having the same love, being one in spirit and of mind. Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit, but rather, in humility, value others above yourself, not looking to your own interests, but looking to the interests of others. In your relationships with one another, have the same mindset or the same attitude as Christ Jesus, who being the very nature God, did not consider equality with God something to be used to his own advantage, but rather he made himself nothing by taking on the very nature of a servant and being made in human likeness, and being found in the appearance as a man, he humbled himself by becoming obedient to death, even death on the cross. Here we see this picture of Jesus, the most humble act. We see Jesus, who is in paradise in heaven. He is the creator who becomes his creation. That's already a step of humility. And then he dies on the cross, even though he didn't deserve it, he dies for our sins, the greatest act of humility. And so this is our example, and it says we should have the same attitude, the same mindset. And it talked about that earlier. It said, do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit, but value other people. Like, we got a bunch of kids in here today, right? Did your parents ever tell you, like be nice to your brother or sister? Do they ever say stuff like that to you, right? Never? They ever have to remind you of that? As adults, sometimes we need to be reminded of these same things, right? Be nice to the people around you. It's not all about you. Like, like sometimes we get like the problem when we're kids, like it's our sibling's birthday or something like that, and we don't get any presents, and they get all the presents, and all of a sudden we were throwing like a temper tantrum because we're just so upset about it. But we have to work against that mindset, because as adults, sometimes we have that same mindset, like I want stuff for me, and we can live this self-focused life. But it begins here with God saying, be humble, follow Jesus' example. Don't think of yourself too highly. Value other people's interests. Now think of our country, right? Is that what's happening in our country? We might say no, because that's what we see on the news, right? But I think that we're really not that far from that. Because, like I don't go around every day and like people are hostile to me because of my views or my political thoughts or just how I live my life. I don't encounter hostility about that all the time. But maybe you do experience that sometimes. But I think the attitude that needs to shift is to realize that we have more in common, even when we might disagree with some people. We actually have more in common. And while we maybe have some different ways we go about it, really, in the end, our values and our hopes and dreams are really very similar. And if we just have to remember that and be humble and be willing to maybe accept other people when they don't necessarily agree with us politically, this could bring healing to our land. It could be healing to our country. It could bring really healing to our own hearts. See, the question is, if you're driving down the street and you see the No Kings rally on the corner, they're out here by the mall all the time. Or maybe you see someone in the store you're shopping and they have a MAGA hat on. So again, we hit both sides there. What's your thoughts and feelings on that? Do you automatically judge that person? Do you automatically have a negative feeling towards that person? Well, maybe we need to be humble and not let that cause division, but to realize that other people have other opinions. We need to look to maybe other people's interests and be respectful of that. And that only happens when we have humility, when we're humble. This is the first thing we see. Be humble. Have an attitude like Christ. Look to other people's interests. Be willing to have a dialogue, even if you disagree, and not be judgmental or be hurtful. Be willing to be accepting of people even when you don't agree with them. That's a humble mindset. We go back to that verse. Again, it says, if my people who are called by my name will humble themselves. And then what's the second thing we see there? And then it says, pray and seek my face. Pray and seek my face. Here's a question for you. How much time do you spend watching the news or participating online, maybe whether that's complaining about certain people or posting your political views? How much time do you spend doing that compared to how much time do you spend praying for our nation and our leaders? Well, it's never going to be, like here's one way over the other, but the point of that is that do we even do that? Do we even pray for our nation? Do we even seek God and his ways on behalf of our nation? See, it says stuff like this in the Bible. In 1 Timothy chapter 2, it says this. It says, I urge you then, first of all, that petition, prayers, and intercessions and thanksgiving be made for all people, for kings and all those in authority, that we may live peaceful and quiet lives in all godliness and holiness. Here he says, first of all, let's take time to intercede to God. Let's take time to make petitions to God. Let's take time to pray. Let's even take time to be thankful to God for all those in authority. Not just the people I agree with, but all those in authority. To even be thankful for them in these moments. And it says, if we do that, then we can live quiet and godly lives. See, if we buy into the narrative that our country is so deeply divided, that just causes more division in our own hearts. We begin to be more judgmental. We begin to be more disagreeable. We begin to be bitter and angry in our hearts. But it says that if we are willing to, with thanksgiving, offer these prayers and petitions, It can lead to this peaceful and godly life. It can keep our hearts and our minds in the right place. And that comes with prayer. The Bible says we should even pray and love our enemies, right? And so you might see those other people as your enemies, and we're called to pray for them, for our leaders. It talks about this in Romans too. It talks about how we should be subject to those who are governing authorities over us. That if we want to be free from the fear that comes from authority, that we need to do what's right, and then we'll be commended for that. In Romans, it says that we should submit to authorities, not because of possible punishment, but because of a matter of our own conscience, keeping our own heart right. And it says, give to everyone in Romans what you owe them, whether that's taxes, pay your taxes. If that's respect, then respect. If it's honor, give them honor. Maybe you do pray for our country, but the question is there, it says, pray and seek God's face. The prayer shouldn't be, God, change everybody else's opinion towards my opinion of things. It's not praying that my will be done. It's praying that God's will would be done. Think of the prayer that Jesus said we should pray. It says, thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Not my will be done, change everybody's opinions of my ideas, but it's saying seeking God's face, his kingdom come. When our life is about his kingdom, then our heart will be in the right spot. As Americans, we might pledge our allegiance to the flag when we're in school, right? Does anybody know the Pledge of Allegiance? Some of you kids back there, do you guys know that? Do you say that in school still? Yeah, some of you do. Like we might pledge our allegiance, and we can be grateful for our country, but our ultimate allegiance is in God and his kingdom. And when we keep our heart focused there on God and his kingdom, when it's about his kingdom come, not my will be done, but his will be done, that helps keep our hearts again in the right spot. See, if we are humble, when we're not so quickly offended, we're not so judgmental, when we're humble and we consider other people, when we are seeking God's face, this keeps our hearts aligned in the right spot. So it's praying God's kingdom come, his will be done. And we're praying for other people, not that they would agree with us, but we're seeking God's face that he might guide and direct those who lead us. So again, we come back to that verse for the third part. It says again in 2 Chronicles, if my people who are called by my name will humble themselves, pray and seek my face, and then it says, and turn from their wicked ways, to turn from sin. I think a lot of times when this verse is presented for our country, we think about all the evil that we might see in our country. You might think of all of the pain, the suffering, the evil, all those people out there who are doing wrong things. And we think that the country should change, but notice what it says there. It doesn't say if all of those heathens out there will turn from their wicked ways. That's not what it says. It says, if my people will turn from their wicked ways. See, this is a hard issue for us. If we want to not be divided as a nation, it really begins in our own hearts to not be divided. It's calling us to live differently as representatives of Christ in this world. See, we bear his name as Christians. It means little Christ, but are we Christ-like in our actions? As followers of Jesus, we should participate in the public realm and political and voting and things like that. We should, call for our ethics and our morals based upon our faith to not be thrown to the wind. But most of all, we can't just say that with our mouths. How we live our life needs to back that up. It says that they will know, Jesus said this, as they will know you are my followers, they will know you are my Christians, they will know you are followers of Jesus, not by what we say, but by our love. That's how we should be known. Is our life backing up what we say, what we believe? Jesus gives us this commandment, John chapter 13. He says, a new commandment I give you, love one another. As I have loved you, so you must love one another. By this, everyone will know you are my disciple if you love one another. We will be known by our love. That's what we're called to do. They will see Jesus in our life by our love. And so this is a new commandment to not love ourselves, but to be humble, to consider other people. And out of that love, to seek God and his love most of all, that it might fill our lives and overflow through our lives. See, I think that we've been lied to as a nation by the media as well. And there is division out there, and there is evil, and there are issues. Our nation isn't perfect. But that doesn't have to be the narrative of our life day to day. See, I think I come back to that verse in Chronicles. If we humble ourselves, if we pray and seek God, if we turn towards him and make our life resemble our beliefs and our word, think of what difference that would make in your life. Man, that would change the way that I live. Think about the difference that would make in your family or your circle of friends. You could begin to make a difference there. And just think of if all of you started to do that, like what difference that might make in our community, where you work, where you go to school, where you live. And if that impact continues to grow, think about what that might do in our region or across our nation. See, this, as we see this call for the nation of Israel, the Hebrew people, so long ago, really the challenge for us is the same. If we can do this individually, the impact can grow. And we can find healing. We can change the narrative. We can find that God is at work in us and in our lives. And it can bring hope not only to us, but to the people that we come in contact with. I think that's real healing. And while that promise might be for the nation of Israel long ago, I think that promise is still true today. If we take this ourselves, let's not buy into the narrative. Instead of bringing more division, let's bring hope to our world, to our country. We've had a great history. Let's continue to maybe make it greater as we can day by day, not because our nation is great, but because our God is great, and he can bring hope. I'm going to ask you just to pray with me as we think about this today. God, we were challenged today by your word for our own heart. We were challenged today by your word for how we live. We were challenged today, God, about our nation. And as we think about all these things, may it just begin in our own hearts. May you speak to us. May you challenge us. May we take that conviction and take it to heart. May we not be so quick to judge, but may we be an example of your love. You are so loving towards us. You care for us even when we didn't care for you. May that be the heartbeat of our lives that might shift our neighborhoods, our community, our families, our lives, and even our world, God. May we take this to heart. It begins not with my will be done, but with your will be done, Lord. Your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. We pray this in your name.